I'm in that right hemisphere. So I know how to get into it and out of it. And I used to tell my students that. I said, if you find that you're in la-la land, you've been creating all day. Oh, thank you very much. You've been creating all day, then just count. All you have to do is add 2 and 2 together, and 3 and 3, and you're back to your stress side, you know. And we live there. Like I said, when I first started out in graduate school, everyone had to do this real edgy work, you know. So we were in our right hemisphere, just making this stuff, and so you know, you get into that mode, and I know what it's like. So then when I'd have students, and I knew that they maybe had a dental appointment after class, I'd say, be sure and count, because you've got to get back into that world where you're more stressed out. And I said, but the thing is that you don't want to be there when you're creating your art, you know, so you want to be as creative as you could possibly be. And but the thing is that my art started changing, and like I said, it just, you know, it depends on where I was at that time frame. And I wanted to have something for this show that showed where I've been. And some of you have had me in a class, and so you remember it. The frogs were a demonstration in watercolor, and I used to like to. And those, you know, I think when I was teaching at Missouri Southern, I was very much myself. It was a very small school, and those students had like I said earlier, younger me, you know, they had the more daring and all this. Life kind of starts, you know, you go through life and the edges get kind of knocked off a little bit, you know. You experience life in a different way. So you're a different person as you emerge. You're not this, you know, you can't go back and be that same person. I can't be that graduate student. But the early students got that personality, so they probably think, oh, I remember her back then. The other ones, it was different. The group in Springfield, because it is a faculty of 29 faculty members, you can imagine it's a whole different show. And so I wasn't as playful with the students that I had at Missouri Southern. It was just different. It was just delivering the, you know, teaching students. But I did every once in a while, I'd say, well, okay, now I'd say, you're going to walk in here, I want you to leave all your troubles outside the door, because I don't want you to be on edge. And so after a while he did. And the students, I could get them to be in their right hemisphere, you know, and really create things that they had no idea they could ever do, you know. And so I think a lot of it is time frames and the different way, and I can see how different places that I teach, like the show in Springfield will be different. It's a different audience, totally. So the pictures that I'm sending over there are different. They're a little more, not uptight, I don't want to say, it's just that they're a little bit, you know, they're for a university faculty that's just a little more uptight, I guess I'd say. You know, they'll like the words, but it'll be a little bit different. And like when I had my pop-up gallery in Carthage, it's just a little thing that I told some of you about. A lot of people made road trips from Springfield and Kansas City because they knew of, you know, me more, I guess more recent there, you know. And so this is nice to have this show, because the people that will see this will see, oh, I remember that time. You know, I remember her giving that demonstration. You know, I remember this, or, you know. And so all of these pieces reflect a time that, you know, time frame in the Joplin area. And then some of them in the more recent times. The one that's behind Gerald over there, that's the door, and it's called the Magician's Stage. It's the only oil in this show, and so it's just very recent. You don't want to lean up against it at all, you know. But I'm always inventing the wheel when I'm working. I don't have it. I don't go in there and just paint. I'm always thinking, oh, I just learned something. I'm always telling John, oh, I tell you, I had a breakthrough today. He said, what's your breakthrough today? It's like a duck waking up each morning. I'm going to start this morning in this way. And so when I do work, I do discover things, you know. Even though I'm a teacher, I can perform as a teacher, but when I'm in my studio, I'm inventing things with myself. Someone else may think, oh, I've done that. I do that every day, you know. But I don't have a recipe, you know. Students like recipes. I try to, you know, maybe show that printmaking and pottery is a good way where you can give a recipe as to how you do this thing, you know, how you make this plate or this pot. But painting and drawing is different. All I could do is inspire them, you know. All I could do is inspire someone that was maybe the worst person in the class to end up being the best person in the class. That's what I like to do. You know, I like to, you know, transform them. And so a lot of this work is it's all mixed in with that, all those years of teaching. Someone asked me last night, they said, I noticed you don't have any time periods on these. And I said, no, because it's all timeless. It's all me, you know, it doesn't matter whether it was, you know, when I first had my children and was in that mode, and then later on, it doesn't matter, it's just all me and today, you know. And I will tell you about some of them. I'm just now thinking of the time here because I can't get into my right hemisphere, just kind of but I want to talk about these, but first I'd like to give you a little bit of insight about some of them. When you see the one with she's the feather dancer over there, that's when my oldest daughter had thyroid cancer. And so I was worried about her, and so I went up in my studio, and I've had lots of studios, but this is the one that at the house that I grew up in, and we built a studio. It's a really nice studio. And so it's the one where I went up there and I had to just paint, you know, and think about, you know, Jenny's healing and all of this stuff. And so there's a lot of maybe some symbolism in there, but yet it just that I was thinking about her so strongly. And so, and I don't think, you know, I'm not thinking, well, I'm going to put this in here, this means this. It's not that way. I don't do it that way. It just appears. And I don't want to say, I hate to use the word channeling or something like that, because that's not the audience I'm in right now. And so, but the thing is that sometimes things just, I think, happen in the universe and you don't realize it. It just goes in that picture. And so there's a bee in the lower left-hand corner. I thought, what am I doing with that? But the thing with that is that it can, later on, I can say, oh, that's the illness, you know, the coming in. And she's dancing on eggs. So, you know, you can weave a story around any of these. And then when you look at those panels over there, the 6 panels of those angels, they're called, I have different names, but that was after 9/11 and the shock of that. And so that first one, that first angel that is, let me put this down. See how I kind of get into it. That first one on the left, she's catching this sphere. That's the earth. And so she's catching it and kind of looking like, oh, what happened? And then the one next to her, it's the shock and awe. They were saying shock and awe. And so that's that one. And so she's shocked. The next angel, the third angel, she's holding this globe, and that's the earth. And she's going to hold it for a while because it needs healing. And then that other one, I just love her. She's the fourth one. And she's molding it like clay, like we're going to redo this thing, you know. And so then the next angel holds it next to her heart, because that's the main power of the healing right there. And then that older one is, and I don't know why I made her older. I'm not consciously thinking of this, because the thing is that they wouldn't be what they are if I did. But she's going to throw it back out to the universe, so the earth is healing again. So those are just supposed to be characters that, you know, have different planets, and they're throwing some of them back, and they're working on them and everything. But the main thing with that is that that's an example of where I was at that time, you know, and I was just painting and going with the flow. So all of this is just going with the flow. The next one over there, the Libyan Sybil with the fish, I'll be giving a watercolor collage workshop, and so that I wanted to put that in just to kind of show that one, how it's just a collage of watercolor pieces. And so things in this show just kind of reflect different things that I wanted the audience to see. They see the bronzes and everything, and that's a period of John's time when we were getting horses. You know, he just goes around with me, and he and Jerry just kind of haul my artwork to places, and so it just, you know, we have a storage trailer that we just put it all in. You know, sometimes it has lawnmowers in it, sometimes a horse. But the thing is that the horses were done at that time, and like my art is the same thing. And so I'm trying to think of other ones. The ones you see that, the other panels that have the goose around them, those are inspired by Margaret Wheeler's hand wovens. And she had a series of these elegant ladies with her clothing on them. They don't look like her things, but then they had birds. She had a bird hat. I thought, well, I like that bird hat, so I'll put that on there. And so those are of that time, kind of honoring Margaret. And I was glad that Sean was liking these panels, because I thought, well, I said, I'll bring a lot of stuff, and you just pick from that what you want, you know. Because I thought they know more what would be good for this gallery and this community. And so I thought, okay, I have another panel. I'll bring some more panels. And so then you get the funny ones with the girls with the fish hats, and I thought, that sounds like a derby day to me. But when I look at those, and you gotta know that I go into my studio, I feel like that. So I was feeling real, you know. And so that's the thing, is that all of these have, when you walk into the gallery, you're seeing different modes of how I was feeling, you know. I like humor in my work, and I like kind of edgy humor sometimes, depending on the audience. And so, you know, it's reflected in all of these. The Cheesy Dream is the only one of that series that I went back and worked on. And I may go back into some of these. John said, don't touch them, just let them be of that time. And I thought, well, you know, I might add a little highlight here, there, you know, just if I want to. And so I thought, I'll work on that. And I did tighten it up in some ways. And I thought, oh, watch it, because you're moving it out of where it was, not so tight. When you're in different places, you reflect that. Artists around here are more, they like that detail work. You know, except for Diana, she likes to get very abstract sometime and very detailed, so she could play back and forth like that. When I go into, and I feel a little intimidated sometimes, because I think, oh, they've emerged and gotten really good. They can look at my stuff and think, ooh, that's not very, you know, good. Especially that arm that's 10 times too long or something, but, you know, that's the way that arm had to be, you know, to reflect the idea. But then Springfield's a little different. When I was there, you didn't dare have anything detailed, you know. And so that's a whole different group. And so if I walk in with, you know, show things, I get by with the little egg tempers, I think, but then Springfield's different. They're a little on the more abstract level. And you see these people that are well known, and they're just super abstract. And so it's a whole different thing, you know. And it's interesting. So if you're an artist and you think, well, I'm kind of out of place here, there's always a place for you. There's always another town that's just right for you, you know. And then sometimes you could be both ways, you know. You just I have an abstract canvas. One of the radio stations, I can't pronounce the name of it. KSPR, or what is it? It's the Pittsburgh group. KR. I don't know. But anyway, a real nice interview, and he said, what about that picture over there? Well, it's abstract, but that's where I ran a painting out. You know, I thought painting abstract works is very difficult, and I thought, well, I'm not even going to try, but I'll run my paint out on that and see if it turns out to something. But mainly, you know, my work is just an interaction with the paint, and then sometimes I think, oh, you know, this little character needs something that's totally absurd, like the. I used to call that one Lawrence at the pond, and so I added the fish at the last because I thought, you know, there needs to be something in that space. I deal with shapes and spaces, and then the people get to go in there, but they are characters to me. You know, they get to either go in or they're going to be erased if they don't behave on that canvas in some way. They're going to be out of it. You know, the feather dancer, I forgot to say. With my granddaughters, I used to make tissue wings, and we'd run it around in the backyard and play out we were angels and stuff. And so that has some tissue wings on it. So there's just fragments. And so it's all about memories and fragments of time, inspiration, thoughts. You know, those are all of these things. And so I'm going to so we could have our time, right? and everything. I want to tell you about these works. I could go on forever about these, but when I mentioned that I taught at Missouri State, and it was the publisher parish if you wanted to go through professorship, and so I thought, oh, okay, I have to do that. And so I did apply for some grants, and I got 4 separate summer faculty fellowships that were really something. You know, by the time you gave them your proposal, because everyone on campus, math, science, everybody competed for those. It was like $6,000 for the summer to do your research. And so I got one that I had, I got 4 of them, and over a 17-year period. And so this particular one was called Mythic Creatures and the Perception of Time. And so this is where I got the studio in Kansas City. I thought and my kids were up by this time, and so I thought, I've got to get away. My oldest son was going to come in from Wisconsin and live in Kansas City. I thought, I'll get a studio, and so he can have it after I'm finished with it. And he had it for a little while. But this was at the Livestock Exchange Building, 5th floor, and they still have artists up there, you know. So I had this little gallery space. It wasn't any studio space. It wasn't any bigger than this area in here. And so I worked on these. The animals you see are from Bass Pro. They loaned me some of their taxidermied images, or objects, I should call them. And so I had several wild rabbits. I had some goats. I had everything. They had so many things, you know. And so I had a lot of them for my classes, and even bears and everything. It was very magical for the Greenwood students next to MSU. And my students too, they got to draw these. And so, draw the taxidermy animals. And so I had a snow goose, and I had, like I said, the rabbits. And so I had all of these creatures in this little space. And I thought, okay, now I've got to create my theme. I've got to have it done by the end of this, the summer. And so these works were created. And when I create them, it's like there's certain puzzle parts that have to be in there. And I don't know what they are, but the picture's not finished until I do that one thing. And so I'll stay, you know, until I get it settled. I can't relax until I get it done. And so I might work on something, and then this has to be just right, you know, or it bothers me, you know. And so, but I don't know, I don't sketch it. I didn't sketch these ahead of time. I just started working on them. Actually, this animal is my dog. It looks like, I don't know what. But anyway, I thought I'll put Lulabelle, the first Lulabelle, in this section. I knew I needed something. And so I thought, this is interesting because it has a good story. It's about the perception of time. Think of time, that we try to gather time. And you know, you can't gather time, but notice the loose, you know, these rabbits, the rabbits indicate time. And so the octopus is like our multitasking, you know, and we're always carrying that on our backs, all of our things that weight us down. And so this is kind of, and I don't know who that image is up there, you know, it's just, these are images that are in the back of your mind. And like I said, if I see too much of you and talking to you, you're going to be in one of these, you know, you might be her. And so, but this one is the snow goose and the rabbit trying to run. I think this one's called Time on the Run. We have out of time, slow time, no time. Think of the word time and how it is everywhere. On time, time out, time in, time for this, time for that. And so we're moving to time, and this is the one for morphing. I used my own feet for that, you know. And this one I did in the studio in Joplin, and or finished her up because I had to, you know, I had 7 of them. And so she's jumping to time, but the rabbit's coming around. He's always in the picture somehow. And so, and that's how time changes us, you know, changes our face. I think I was feeling like I want to pull my face up or something like that. And so this is, you know, that feeling of time going and running out of time. I made a list of all the times. Time to take notice, time frames, on time, I said that, capturing time, we can't capture time, we want to, time warp, time sharing, timetable. Think of all the time in our life. It's just time is just, we can't do anything about it. First time, second time, time out, time left. It's time to go and it's time to stop. See, so that's a lot of things. Now this is the one that's titled Time Suspended. And it's kind of interesting because you can suspend time or feel like you are suspended because you're going in two different directions. So you're stuck. You're just totally stuck. You know, I have to do this, I have to do that, but then here you are just stuck in time. So you have suspended time in such a small way because you're going in both directions. And these are fun. I love to play games with the audience as far as putting more arms and legs in there. And this one, you can't tell if this one, these two legs belong to that one or it belongs to this one. And that's what was fun with me. And then I had to put the one with the nose up there. I thought I was probably reading a story to my granddaughters about, Pinocchio or something. Those things kind of just go in there. But yet, there's another leg here, so you think, is this the body or that? Or are there legs? And so that's the thing is that with the idea of time, and then this is the one that's, let's tell this one. This is time captured and new beginnings. And so the only reason that the rabbit's still wrapped up is because it's asleep. It can get out. Time can always run away from us, Time lost, time, but it's called time, the beginning of time. And so here we have the snow goose, and the snow goose, the idea behind a snow goose is always with the same mate, always. It only has one mate, and that it stays with it forever. And so it's a very loyal bird, and so it's, the snow goose is there. And then I had the sphere, the fish, and so, and then the character up there is like, are there people behind that or what? You can weave stories to all of these, and it depends on what story you want to tell. So it's time suspended, but then the beginnings. So we have times when we just have to start all over. It's time to start all over, and that's kind of the idea behind that one. So I was glad to have this space in here, so you're immersed in this. You can sit in a chair and think, oh, what does this mean to me? Other people have different ideas. I had one of my other fellowships was titled Musée du Mort, and that's the Museum of the Dead. And so I've been to Italy, in Paris, and so I've been to the graveyards, and I've been to the museums, and I realized that some of the same statues are in the graveyards are in the museum. It's just that in the museum, they're marble, but then in the graveyard, they'll be concrete. But then there's a lot of bronzes in there. I mean, full-blown, beautiful bronzes that the birds and the cats and everything are living on and around. And so it's just astounding. And so I did this one. And so I had, I think John and Gerald will remember this, is that I had maybe 20 panels that were 4x8 sheets of masonite. And so they built the frames around them, or the kind of the edge. And so one of them was cut in half to where I had 4x4s. And so that created an image. I just worked in the studio at the house here in Joplin, and just day and night, because those were big things. And so some of them are 4x8 feet. Wow. And then the one then there were some that were just single 4x4s. And so I had that whole collection. And I thought, how are we going to store that? No one's going to buy those, Missouri State senior class bought 3 of them after 9/11. And so I kind of changed it around for them, being an educator. I said, why don't you, I won the competition, and I said, well, why don't you give me some ideas and I'll let you be part of this. So some of them got to help me with ideas. It was the same imagery, but then I colored it in a different way. I put a kind of a flag in the back of it and everything, made it more patriotic.
Do these images come to your mind before you get to the canvas, or once it's in front of it?
Yes. Yeah. Now sometimes I'll have ideas, like with the graveyard series. I took lots of pictures, but I never looked at them. But then somehow they were kind of going into my soul, as you might want to say. So I might have had, at that time we didn't have cell phones, so I had a lot of them, and I thought, I just started drawing. And I'll tell you, with that particular one, the 4 by 8 foot sheets, I have them stored in our barn. At this, we have a place called Rocky Hill in Carthage, and so we have a cabin there, and it's really more like a cottage. And so John has his studio there, his woodworking studio, and I do my little egg tempers up there in the barn. We have a little bungalow. It's a 6-stall barn, but only 3 stalls are for the horses. And so I thought, okay, let's hang those up in the stalls. So they're in the stalls. If anybody ever wants to see those things, they are in the stalls. The horses haven't done anything to them. They haven't rubbed their bums on them or anything. And the spiders have had a good time with them. And they're charcoal. I didn't get into color with those. They're too big to, I couldn't do it in time. But I remember I think it was one of the newspaper writers said, that show ought to just be dumped in the Seine. That she didn't like it. I thought, oh. But they're huge pieces, and they reflected a lot. So I had a show at Missouri State with some other faculty in other rooms, and so those pieces were up, and to have them in the gallery, that size, if you could imagine, it was different. And so I had my students write on, what they thought. I had, because I was teaching them about, art history and art criticism. And so one was to write, about art. And so I had this whole list, and so they were filling it out. Some people had complete turnarounds just looking at the artwork. It was really interesting. One lady came up to me and said, I'm not going to follow my daughter home from high school anymore. I just haven't been trusting her. She said, I trust her now. And I said, how did you trust her? And she said, well, that picture over there where the little girl's reaching up to her mother, and the mother, it was one of the graveyard images where they were like this, sitting in a chair. And so she was looking down at her, and then this other one. They were from different spaces, but I just put them together, And so she said, that's my daughter, and that's me sitting there. Mm-hmm. So some artwork relates to other people in different ways. And then there was a man that I knew who he was probably. He kept standing in front of one of the pictures, and the gallery director said that he keeps coming in here, and he just stands in front of it. And I said, I think I know who that might be. Well, because the 9/11 had a little more, imagery that was related to that, I had this image like this, and then there were some horses in the back, or just kind of a wispy image of that. And his son had committed suicide, so he was relating to that, but he didn't say why, just that he had to come back and stare at it. So it was doing some kind of therapy for him. It was, connected. And so when you have artworks like this, different people, if you come in by yourself and you think there's one that I really like, you're drawn to it on a subconscious level. There's something in it that is pulling you. There's something, it could be, like I said, all these are memories, they're inspiration, they're imagination, they're fragments of thoughts and things. So all of those attach to people and they relate in that way. And so it's interesting for me to make these kind of, images that you don't, you can't say, oh, that's a cow in a field and I know what that cow's doing, it's just eating and I'm going to go on by, But then some people look at it and think, oh, I remember the cows when I was a little kid and it stepped on my foot and blah, blah, blah. So it's connecting in some way. But these, when you get the human figure, you're tapping into other things, and I love that. I just think that's wonderful. And I didn't mention that I'm an art therapist, and so I use a lot of this I could have just talk about one picture, and a lot of people, will start talking about what's bothering them, But the thing is that what I have here is pretty much, you're walking into all of me, and it's timeless because what I do tomorrow is still a part of me. It's like your ancestry, your genes that are floating, your blood system is floating in you. Well, that's the way the artwork does when you just or you keep making it. It's all you. Even if it's a little drawing for a grandson or a granddaughter, it's still you coming through there. You're still talking on a conscious or subconscious level. And so that's what all of this is about. And so I could talk on forever, The big pond picture that's in they put it over in the I don't know what you call it.
We call that the alcove.
Alcove, okay. That was an interesting one. That was after the ice storm in Springfield, and I think they had a big ice storm here. I was painting on that at the same time. See, these are in the studio on all the walls. I paint on 5 things at a time, because I just all of a sudden have to paint on them. And sometimes I'll run across a problem in one of them. I might run into, making the rabbit heads over here work somehow. And then I'll think, I don't want to deal with that. And then I go over here, but my subconscious is working on it. So then I could finish something over here and go right to that and immediately correct it, because that subconscious is healing that or making it work.
It's a Jungian type thing.
Yes. It is, yeah. And so we're working in that way. And so that picture of the pond, I call it, was after the ice storm, and one of my high school classmates had died in the ice storm. And so somehow that one was kind of those feelings that were in there, and why I put different people in there. I could, change the story around. I can weave any story you want. But as to why this is here or there, a lot of it I'm just putting it like I just feel like it needs to be. And then later I could think, that's what that's about. Now let me go back to the works that are in the barn. And there were over 20 pieces. It filled the gallery with these 4 by 8 foot and 4 by 4 foot things. And so we go back to that, and remember the students were writing what they thought it was. They had like 20 questions to prompt them. And I thought, if they can write that. These were 200 students, because I was teaching a lot of people at different times. And so other teachers wanted their students to fill out these forms. I thought, what is it about it that they come up with these good ideas and I don't even think about it? I just made those words. They were just, someone said, well, how'd you do this or that or whatever? And I thought, I just made it. Well, the thing is that I made myself sit down in the gallery one time by myself. And I thought, okay, I'm going to answer these questions. I just had the hardest time doing it. I thought, do it, sit here, you've got to do it. And I thought, okay. So I wrote one thing. Pretty soon I realized that entire show was my grieving for my mother's death. I didn't know it. I took care of her, and maybe I didn't cry, I don't know. But I took care of her, and that was to where you're busy doing that, and you don't have time to stop. You just have to keep working. And so I thought, oh my gosh, because there was like in the major galleries, there'll be the kings and queens and their graves, and they're just laying there, and they have it's marble, and they're just kind of like that. Well, there was one of them that was a queen, and then there was a king, and then there was this figure in the middle kind of going like this. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's my mother, that's my father, and that's me in the middle. And then I got to looking at the other ones, and I thought, while I was frantically making those during the summer, I was actually tapping into this other, my feelings and not knowing it. I thought I was just knocking these things out, because I can work pretty fast when I'm working, and I could give a demonstration that's pretty razzle-dazzle, but then it's just drawing, and I'm not thinking on it that much. And so that's what I was doing, and I didn't realize that the whole thing was an homage to her, or my feelings, and that I hadn't expressed. And so you don't know what's going on with some of these, you know. And just like that pond picture, that was a reflection of, I could think back, okay, that's the ice storm and all that took place there. And that one's 9/11. This was just, you know, having to leave Springfield and Joplin and going to Kansas City and kind of hiding in this space and working. And so I'm trying to think if there's other ones. The ones on the other side of the wall are when my granddaughters were little, and I was immersed in the fairy tales, and I love it. I can relate to little kids so well. I don't know about high school kids, but I like the magic of the little kids because they can just be anything with them. You can just play, you know. And so those reflect that. I did work on one of them a little bit, you know. I thought, oh, I'm just going to add this to this. And so they're out there. And then the etchings, they reflect a time because I started out as a printmaker. I never thought of myself as a painter. When I was in school, painting was Missouri State. I was a student there, and it was called SMS. Well, they were just kind of late from the abstract expressionism. So it was all abstract that you had to do. And instructors always said, well, that's good, that's nice, and then walk on. And so you may have learned how to stretch a canvas, but that was about it, you know. And that's fine with me. And I was told once by an instructor, you know, you'd be good, Judy, if your hands didn't get in the way. And he meant your drawing. He said if you could just get on that abstract side. And I thought, oh, okay. So I had those kind of things, you know, so I was always kind of down-pedaling the drawing. And it was years later that I thought, oh, heck, I'm just going to let it just be, especially things like this. I thought, I'm not going to be concerned that there's not any color in them or this or that. The paintings, I don't really worry whether they're right or wrong. I don't even think about, I mean, I teach students, or I did when I was working, color theory and stuff like that. But when I'm working, I break all the rules. I don't even think about it. And I've been trying with these egg temperas, I've been trying to settle down and think, okay, have repetition and have, you know, deal with color theory a little more and design elements. And so I try to do that, but then it doesn't, I get past that. And then I think, oh, I like that little hand creeping up over that fence or this or that, you know. And so I get into that mode. And so, you know, the way we work is just, you know, everyone has their own style, but it's, you know, it's all about my feelings and whatever color I have. And like I said, I do work on 5 or 6 at the same time. So if I'm at a stopping point or a frustration point with one, I'll go to the other one. Well, I have the same palette. And I'll think, oh, I love this color, you know. And then I'll put on something else. And so that's why you'll see these, you know, certain colors that are in there, like the turquoises and the teals and everything.
Are these before or after Italy?
Oh, these are after Italy, yes. Italy was in 1990, and then I went back with the same person from Drury and her friends in 2000. But then I didn't mention my travels. I've been, for art education, I had to present nationally or not have my job. And so fortunately I had a lot of presentations. I went to all the big cities in the country, and I even went to Australia. I thought, oh, I've got to go to Australia. That'll, you know, I can do that. And I went all by myself. Now I wouldn't even drive to Springfield by myself. Now, isn't that, it's kind of like Johnny can jump over the ocean, but Johnny jumps over a milk bottle and blames it all on me. It's just that thing. But anyway, I was motivated, and whenever we have something that's greater than our fears, ourselves, we can do it. We can do anything. You know, it's just that at that time, I knew that if I went to Australia and I got a presentation accepted for the International Society for Education Through Art. And so I presented 2 presentations there, all by myself. I got through all that stuff by myself. And so then my travels, I did some art therapy at Institut Curie in the summer in Paris. I just gained hours, you know, so I'd go there and work a couple of hours. Diane and I went together. And then I've been to Paris and Italy, and so all of that has influenced my work. And then I went to Ireland and Scotland with my son, and then I've been to the Scandinavia countries with the Missouri Southern group. And so all of that's, you know, my favorite places are Italy and Paris. You know, I could walk any place and think, oh, this is like walking down that street in Paris, and I can almost feel the rocks underneath me, you know. And so it made a big impact on me.
To me, all of these have this tremendous feel of the tremendous sculptures that I've seen in Italy. And when you come into, or when I come into their presence, I'm overwhelmed. And these images, to me, I feel overwhelmed and pulled right into them.
Well, that's good. And I like that monumental feel, you know, and that is something. So that's probably the feeling that I got that I came back. Sometimes I think an energy's coming back with me. You know, I think, oh my gosh, I feel so Italian for about a week. And then, you know, so that is it. And that's remarkable that you feel that way, because that's, you know, to be able to respond to art is amazing, because nowadays we don't respond to anything. We don't have time. And so I was, you know, I'm motivated when I have to. Like if I have the fire under my feet, then I can just do all sorts of things. Otherwise, I'm just totally lazy. You know, I can just kind of fool around. You know, so getting these two shows together kind of got me motivated. But then at the same time, I have some egg tempers I want to work on. I think, oh gosh, I don't want to put wires on the backs of those things. I want to paint on these things. And so it's really hard to fight that, you know. But then it's when you are under the wire and you have to produce, then I can do things, you know. And but then I have to count on that experience, you know, that the total experience of everything, even the ice storm, the 9/11, the having the children, you know, my daughter's illness, my mother's illness, all sorts of things, they come into the one thing. And then you go to Europe and you're fed even more, because that goes right into you, you know, into your mindset and everything. So I think I've covered most all the things. That etching over there, Cleo, she has that on loan. I have proofs that have different colors, but I think she's got a nice color. And then you have one that has the gold leaf in it. And so I don't like to make additions. You know, a lot of artists do, they go through the addition. I'm usually experimenting with things, and so I went through a gold leaf stage. So everything got gold leaf because I just loved it. I have a large picture of my second daughter that I didn't bring. It's as big as that wall, kind of this space right in here. And she was a model. I had a gallery in Springfield. And so she'd come in and model for me. And so it's Jeanette standing there with flowers. And I call it the bouquet. I almost brought it, but then I thought, you know, I didn't know if it fit with the thing. So there are other things that but it is just different times. The gold leaf, you know, from Europe and everything, all of that. I just, you know, I would spend all day. And that's the thing that it kind of, when I went to Ireland and Scotland, it wasn't the art, because usually I just focus on the galleries. I don't worry about what I'm eating in Europe. It's all about art. You know? Some people go for the food and they're really good at finding good places. But it's just the art. But then Scotland and Ireland was different. It was the land that was there.
And what about the Giant's Causeway?
Oh,
that whole monument
thing
comes right into you.
Yes, it does, and it's nature, you know, creating that impact. Gerald found some artwork, the galleries there in Scotland and in Ireland, and so we made that trip, and so that was, I thought, oh good, I'm in a museum again, you know. But then the thing is that I really like to just live there, and when I go to museums like the one in the Nelson in Kansas City, I know exactly where things are on walls. I know I'll turn and I'll say so-and-so. And I call him so-and-so because it's to me it's almost human. My kids grew up there. They had to run around up there. And my sister said, you don't let them run around in that gallery, do you? Wow, I do. So they grew up in the Nelson in a lot of ways as little kids. And So the thing is that museums are overpowering, they are, elegant. I like having the show here. It was on the bucket list, and because I thought I'd never, get to have a show in here. Maybe it'd be in a membership show if I get in, but it was really nice and it's nice to see it in this elegant space. I thought this feels better than, I don't know what the new space is going to look, but I love this space. And I noticed the pictures I've taken with the ceiling and everything. They're really interesting. The architecture comes in there. But this is, you see these arched walls. It's like going into a museum, and you're walking in and you see these, they're not, like you say, they're not sculptures, but they have the same, they give you a little feel for that. Does anyone else have any questions? So there's 2 more minutes.
Well, I like this space too. I was just thinking, you never get like art glut when you're here. Like you go to like a museum after 2 floors, you're like,
It's
I can't take it anymore. Not because it's bad. It's just like how many different.
You can't take it all. Yeah.
But okay, so my question is, I told you I counted 15 frogs
Yes.
in this exhibit.
I still can't count. That's in my mind. I only find 11, but then I think
Well, there's some being born in that one.
Oh.
On the door.
No, that's creative.
They're coming out of the corn.
Yeah.
I mean, those are frogs.
That's right. Those are.
So that's 4 frogs in that one.
Oh, okay.
So that's probably the ones you're missing.
I think so. And then I did discover another one in there. I like the image of frogs and birds and things because they give me. And then the frogs are kind of fun. When I was in graduate school, John and we drove a Volkswagen bus, and we were stopped by a cop. And this is the beginning of all this. He was a large, portland man, very big, and his name was Officer Toadell. And we thought, oh my gosh, he looked like a toad, and we never got over that. We started putting him in our works, and so we thought of that, but it was, you've been speeding around the mountains, you're not supposed to do that. And so...
In a VW bus?
In the VW bus, oh gosh, very difficult. Oh my gosh, oh wow.
You're going downhill, I guess.
Going downhill. Oh, I have some stories about that, and being up near Park City after the winter had been there. I'd been there in the spring, and there was a road. And so in the Volkswagen bus, I took my mother and my sister. I said, it's real pretty up here. We'll just drive up here. We got up there, and they're big gullies. And then we saw the land was just, it was just forest down there. I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to get us around the corner. And so I got us there, and they were just going, because we'd go down hills, and that's all you'd see, and the road was really washed out. And then we got to the bottom, and I thought, oh my gosh, the end of the road, and it had a gully that wide, and I thought, I can't back up, there's no way. So I just backed it up a little bit and just drove over it, and I thought, John will just have to get mad at the new bus being ruined. But that was our only way, but that was the Park City thing. But the thing is that we always had frogs after that, and then once you do one, and it makes a nice, a design element, and that's good. Does anybody else have any questions? That I have lots of stories from these. One thing I do have, if you filled out your name, there might be some more. I'm going to give away 4 angel books, and I'll have to tell you this. This is another thing. Oh gosh, this is a story in itself. I had this done myself, and it was almost like making artwork, because I found a printer in Wisconsin, I think, because I wanted the old-fashioned, 3-plate ink on there. I didn't want a digital image, so finding that, the traditional offset printing is really hard. And I wanted the embossment on the front. Well, they don't do that. They'll do it on the dust jackets. So this company said, okay, we'll try to find someone that'll do it. So they'd send me proofs, and I thought, okay, but I wanted it a certain way. And so, this is just one of the little angels that I have. This is part of a large painting, as big as those 2 of those together. And so I kind of liked her. I put her on there. And so putting it together, Gerald helped me with the actual layout of it. And so he was working in Springfield. And so I would draw these. I realized that a lot of people would do a thing, like I'm going to draw houses for the month or something like that. I've got to do that. So I thought I'm going to draw in December. I'm going to draw 1 angel a day. So I started with one of them. And I want to get to her. So this was the first one, and she's kind of uptight a little bit. I'm just starting. And again, remember, I don't pencil them in first. It's going to go right on the page there. So I got the next one, and it was the next day. It was a little looser. And then this one got a little bit, a little more spontaneous. I was feeling a little more confident about it, or maybe I had a couple of glasses of wine. I don't know. But anyway, so they all have different personalities, and they all are in sequence. Some days I was just a little more uptight. Some of them are real, some of them I just really love. And so I wanted the paper to be where someone could just tear it out and put in a little frame. I didn't want the text. These are prompts for people to write journal entries. And I thought, well, I want it to where it won't show through. So it had to be thick, as heavy a paper as you can get. Also, with the offset printing, there's always a little bit of a dust. And so if you rub this, it'll get just slightly darker. The lines will get darker. And you're also rubbing your energy on it. Especially if I rub this, you're getting that on there. But the thing is that a friend of mine asked me, she said, do you ever make mail angels? And I said, no, but I'll try. So I have 3 mail angels, and I thought, I did okay with that. But when I had a gallery downtown Springfield, paying the rent, always at first you think, oh, that doesn't sound bad, because you're thinking for the whole year, not every month. And so I would invite my friends over, and my old high school friends that would get together once in a while, and invite them over for wine and some cheese in my little tiny gallery. And so they would buy one of my drawings, and that helped pay the rent, And they were about this size. They were just little things like this. And they'd pay anywhere from $50 to $150. And so I would so this is packed with stuff that I was charging $50 a piece, And so the thing is that they're all, so that helped support me. So things like this, I would use it. But they're all different. It's December. And then some of them are real sassy, so I was in a sassy mood. So you think, oh. But then I started writing. Oh gosh, this was. I started writing the prompts, and so I would send them to Gerald and everything. And he'd say, "Mom, you've got to call it halts here because I'm on the schedule, and if I do one thing here, it changes the whole setup." And so I said, "Oh, Angelique cannot be that one. It has to be this other one." So they were like people that I was dealing with. And I said, okay, this one, some of them have names, some of them don't. And then I had one where I just was really messing up with this drawing. I thought, oh my gosh. So it turned into this one with a cat. And so and so the prompt is, why does the cat fall asleep every time Maud, or whoever I named her, sings? Well, obviously she didn't sing very well. And so I was relating to this, and so they all are in there. One of them I wanted to change, and I said, I think it was, I shouldn't show you which one it is. But anyway, I was talking to Gerald on the phone, and we had our computers to where he could work on his, and I had mine. And I said, Gerald, I've got to change this. I'll just sketch it, take me a couple minutes. He said, no, you're going to have to do it with the computer. I thought, oh, what? And so here with this mouse trying to do this stuff, erasing it, I think it was 2 hours maybe. I mean, I thought, oh, I could do it 2 seconds by drawing it. I said, let me just change it. No, I've got it already set up in that thing. And so we got it done, And so they're all in here. So this whole thing was a journey. And they all have, they're all, I love this one. This is called Kit Kat Sassafras. It's kind of, I named that, I thought my granddaughter could, be Kit Kat, So, and then I have different ones. I have my mother, and she heads up the Angels of the Month, I think, or the end of that. Let me see. Yeah. So the only photograph reference, I use this one. But I have to watch that. I don't look at the photograph or it's not going to work. It just won't work. So I'm going to draw names. Did you all fill it out? Okay. And then, gee, it needs one. And then Spiva will have, so I think you guys are out of them, or so you might have them in there. But anyway, so I have 4 of these, and so we'll draw 4 names.